Tonight's coverage of the NLRL Sunday League is brought to you by Malwa Transport, oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec. Visit their website on www.malwa-transport.ca. Good evening then, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of Round 8 of the NLRL Sunday League Season 3, brought to you by Malwa Transport and TRTN. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here in the hills above the city of Spielberg, Austria, at the nation's most popular motorsports venue. It has gone by a few names over the years, the Österreichring, the A1 Ring, but you may know it by its most popular name, the Red Bull Ring. Founded as the Österreichring in 1969, this circuit has been the de facto home of the Austrian Grand Prix. First from 1970 to 1987, then from 1997 to 2003, where in the year after, the then, as it was known, the A1 Ring, would be purchased by Dietrich Mateschitz, co-founder of Red Bull and founder of the Red Bull Racing Formula One team, and over 7 years of extensive renovation would reopen in 2011 for the Austrian Grand Prix as the Red Bull Ring. The rest, then, for Formula One has been history. The Red Bull Ring also holds races for MotoGP, also labelled as the Austrian Grand Prix, and has ran consistently on the calendar since 2016, as well as rounds of DTM and TCR Europe. Up until 2021, it was also part of the European Le Mans Series calendar as the 4 hours of Red Bull Ring. In the modern day, then, it's comprised of 10 turns and 2.6 miles of FIA Grade 1 tarmac. A fantastic circuit here. A prolific part of the modern Formula One repertoire, and today the home of Round 8 of the Championship. Looking onto the calendar, we're in the twilight chapters here for the Sunday League Season 3. Only one yet can still be crowned champion, but there are still 2 championships to be played for, both across drivers and teams alike. We find us here in the double sprint rounds at Spielberg, with Indianapolis coming up next week, and Silverstone capping off the calendar with double sprints all the way to the end of Season 3. Looking at the championship standings heading into round 8 of the championship, we stay on board at the moment with Alex Albert in the Bentley number 36. Melvin Milliston leads the charge then with 244 points, putting himself well over a solid distance to Cas van Velzen in second place. Tyler Vermaak in third, but by an incredibly finite single point margin to Christian Lebay in fourth with 157 points. Byron Forrest in fifth with 118 points. James Mason off him by 5 points to 113. Axel Cassier and Kevin Quain find themselves joint 7th with 91 points apiece. Scott Milbank in 9th with 72 points, rounding out the top 10. Ivan Sanchez with 66 points. Looking into the Teams Championship then, starting things off, we can see that Malwa has extended the margin to a little under 100 points. Currently 94-point lead over K1 Esports. Actually, I believe, having a look here, so that would be... Yes, I believe in and around 94 points there in the championship between those two teams. Holkianos now up to 3rd and ahead of MSA. Keck Sim Racing Team up to 5th and ahead of Bulgarian and U Amateurs. One new team for round 8, I should say. WHF Sim Sport. Looking at the regulations for this round, we're currently in free practice for round 8, and it's going to be Q1 coming up next for 10 minutes, then the first of our 2 races, then we'll do it all over again. Another 5-minute free practice, another 10-minute qualifying, and another 30-minute race. 2 new drivers for this round, Fabio Marquez and Michael Rushton, with Ferrari and Bentley respectively. And so we're on board at the moment with Alex Albert. We'll take a look away from the Bentley to get a look at some of the potential new faces of today's race. There is definitely a lot to be discussed coming into this round. We can see at the moment Cas van Velzen, a brand new livery on his number 420 Porsche, was a real star of the show last round out in round 7 of the championship, heading out of Monza in his prolific battle then with Tyler Vermaak for a podium position. Van Velzen now appears to be sporting the colours there, and now I'm trying to remember the name. It is Manthey EMA, if I'm not mistaken there. That is a very iconic set of colours for the Porsche 911. Very, very popular around GT racing. Looking further around the field, we do have, I believe, a look here at some of our new drivers. Let's see if we can find him. Michael Rushton there hiding amongst the pit lane. You can see, though, stands out like a sore thumb in the giant Bentley Continental. That's one of 3 in today's race. He'll be alongside Alex Albert and Ethan Oliver, who's out on track at the moment, making his return to the Sunday League for the first time since the end of Season 2. Now makes an appearance in Season 3 Round 8, as opposed to Season 2 Round 8 at Watkins Glen International. Back in the number 724 then, ditching the golden colours of K1 Esports, for more of his own personal flair there, the baby blue on the number 724 Bentley. He's on his way down towards turns 9 and 10. We'll get a full comprehensive tour coming up at the end of free practice into the start of qualifying today. Let's see if we can catch on board with any of the other drivers here around the field, heading down towards, I believe this is Schlossgold, number 413, James Mason. So we will be expecting another early bird performance out of the 413 coming into qualifying today. He's got 2 opportunities to shine in that regard, and there's a lot to pick apart in not a lot of time to do so in the upcoming first of 2 qualifying sessions. Definitely a lot on the horizon here for round 8 of the championship. It's going to be quite exciting then. We follow there, Mason down to the Red Bull Mobile corner, turn 10. So, on to the start of the first of our 2 10-minute qualifying sessions already early out the gates there. You can see first into the frame, Melvin Milliston up the field, but there is James Mason right behind him. Right behind him is Cas van Veltzen in that bright neon green Porsche. So let's get on board with our drivers then for the start of qualifying 1. A bit of a slide out of the pits there for James Mason. Does not yet forfeit position to Cas van Veltzen, though. You can see him glued to him there in that bright green Porsche. Let's get on to the discussions then of balance of performance and qualifying predictions. Looking first at the BOP, Aston Martin, Ferrari and Porsche find themselves among the holy trifecta for today's best BOP packages, 40, 20 and 17 kilos respectively for the Vito Advantage, the 296 and the 992. Bentley find themselves not too far behind with -6 on the Continental GT3. Then into the positives, Lamborghini, Ford, Mercedes, McLaren and BMW all gaining some form of weight. Much more minor changes for Lamborghini, Ford and Mercedes, 3 and 5 respectively. McLaren gaining 16 kilos, BMW gaining a whopping 20. So for James Mason on your screens at the moment, that's not going to be a particularly grand day out. And I believe, now this was at least something that was discussed during the pre-race practice sessions, and there'll be more to pick up on in a moment's time in regards to that, namely for one other driver. We can see another step out here for James Mason, and that was the discussion as we catch now on board with the man about to start the first charge into the fray here, riding on 3 race wins in a row now, Melvin Milliston. We did hear rumours that James Mason was running an asymmetrical setup, almost akin to that of stock car racing. That was definitely quite a bizarre thing, but when you consider that with this track, 10 turns, of course, 7 of which are right-handers, 3 of which, turns 2, 6 and 7, are all left-handers. You spend the great majority of your time here at the Red Bull Ring going right. So it wasn't an entirely out of left field strategy for him to do so. I suppose out of right field for the sake of majority here. And then into the discussion after this into qualifying predictions. As we can see already imminent troubles for Melvin Milliston for grip. They're up through Remus at turn 3. So now we catch on board with Bruno Carr in the number 380. The Brazilian talent is definitely looking quite hopeful today. Now, admittedly, he finds himself in a bit of a black hole in terms of the qualifying predictions, as he does not yet find himself on the charts. However, we took a note of a time he set over the course of the pre-race practice session. Sadly, Simbot did not pick up on this, and it was a 1:28.195. That's good enough for second for Bruno Carr if he can replicate that today. But looking off of what we've got here in Simbot's predictions, Tyler Vermaak first with a 1:27.812, Cas van Veltzen second, and Melvin Milliston in third, only separated there, as you can see, by 0.02 of a second. Ethan Oliver fourth and Christian Lebay in fifth. Those two separated by 0.03 of a second. Byron Forrest sixth, Kyle Jenkins seventh, Ivan Sanchez in eighth, and George Todd in ninth. The data does get a little bit sparse there towards the bottom of that list. Only 9 as opposed to the standard top 10 format that we have. So opening up our timing charts, we've already seen some drivers down towards the line here. Melvin Milliston failed to capitalise on that first flying lap. We'll see the first times across the chart there come in a trifecta here, all very close to one another, leading that charge. James Mason, then Bruno Carr, then Tyler Vermaak. Vermaak now the fastest at 1:28.040. Bruno Carr second, James Mason third, Byron Forrest to the line there for fourth. Next comes the 6:07 of Kevin Quain. Then behind him is the number 98 there of, I believe that to be, yes, that was Felix Schwab. Now fourth fastest. Quain doesn't set a time there. He's on to another flying lap right behind Felix Schwab. There was the number 724. That's Ethan Oliver. 1:19 there next across the line. Christian Lebay only fourth fastest at the end of that first flying lap. Next to the line then comes the 36 of Alex Albert. Bear in mind, not a lot of time for these drivers to coax their machines into life here. Tyler Vermack now leading by nearly a whole second to Bruno Carr in the number 380, and McLaren 1-2 at the moment in qualifying. Next to the line comes the leave that to be, yes, the 113. Kyle Jenkins, 7th fastest at the end of that flying lap. We're going to catch on board now with the next to the line, Melvin Milliston, on his way out towards turn 9 and 10 at Rin and Red Bull Mobile corner. So we've seen what Vermack can do. We've seen what LeBay can do. Here comes yet another qualifying heavy hitter from Melvin Milliston, or so we're led to believe, because he missed out on that time as well. Cas van Velzen then takes up the helm and puts himself in between Carr and Vermack, now within 0.3 of a second there of pole position. Nearly halfway into the session, it's been real struggle from the start here for Melvin Milliston. Lord only knows what's going on for him there. Michael Rushton crosses the line for 9th. Ethan Oliver on his way round through turn 10. So we've just seen one Bentley's result. Let's see the other. Here comes the 724. In front of him there was the 607 of Kevin Quain across the line. And that was to 6th fastest. Oliver does not yet set a time on that last flying lap gone. Across the line behind him went Leon Schumacher, the number 99, up to 10th. Pushes Rushton down to 11th. Then Belder comes through to push Rushton down to 12th. And then Sanchez across the line to push Rushton down to 13th. So not a great day for Bentley. Next to the line comes the 36, so there's possible chance of redemption. Here comes Alex Albert, and up and ahead of his fellow Bentley there for 13th. 113 next to the line. Here comes Kyle Jenkins. His last lap put him inside the top 10. Does he get any higher than 9th right now as he crosses the line? Not ahead of Felix Schwab at this time. That gap's still at the front row there, currently between Vermack and Van Velzen. I also want to note here, Byron Forrest, one of the other Porsches in this race today, is up into 3rd and ahead of Bruno Carr. Very, very close, as a matter of fact, to Bruno Carr's time there, putting himself just 35 thousandths of a second faster than the 380. Next to the line then comes the number 420. Here comes Cas van Velzen. Can he take pole position from Vermack? Crossing the line there, no look at an improvement for him. James Mason's up to 3rd fastest though at the end of his flying lap. Then next to the line comes the 380. Here comes Bruno Carr up to 3rd fastest, pushes Mason and Forrest down towards the back of that top 5. The 824 next to the line. Here comes Byron Forrest. Will it be redemption for the American? No, but he's found himself incredibly close there. 9 thousandths of a second between himself and Mason in front. 607 come across the line there. That was Kevin Quain, still in 6th fastest. 724 crossed the line. Ethan Oliver still yet to have set a time in qualifying today. Bear in mind, he's got 2 opportunities with Quali 2 coming up after this forthcoming 30-minute race. Really, he'd like to make his chances stick as soon as possible. And I imagine that's the same story shared by Melvin Milliston. 3 minutes left to go. The 68 is still without a time on the charts here. That leaves it right now up to between Vermack and Van Velzen, as we see George Todd joining incredibly late there in the number 25. May he still have enough time here to get out for one flying lap. It's very, very close to the line here for George Todd. Last across the line just now was Kyle Jenkins, the 113, still in 9th, so still clinging towards the back of the top 10. We're going to catch on board here with the next toward the line. Out of Red Bull Mobile corner at turn 10 is Cas van Velzen. We saw what he could do over the course of last round in Monza. Let's see what he can do here, as right now he lines up on the front row with Tyler Vermack. Next comes the 380. We also see Vermack there in front, yet to have set an improvement over his fastest time. Bruno Carr does go up and ahead of Cas van Velzen, puts himself within 7 thousandths of a second to pole position. That is remarkably thin, the gap now between Carr and Vermack. Bear in mind, we were scheduled to see Bruno Carr in the last round at Monza. I don't believe we actually got the pleasantries of seeing Bruno Carr's performance in the 380. But now we could definitely see a much more reinvigorated performance by the 380. Calls it quits there on his first qualifying session here in the Red Bull Ring. And what a way to cap things off. 7 thousandths of a second. He has sent a very clear message over to Tyler Vermack, and that has been read loud and clear, because out goes the 81 out of the pit lane exit. 36 crossed the line a moment ago. That was Alex Albert, still 14th. Ahead of the other 2 Bentleys in the session so far. The 113 across the line. Kyle Jenkins has been forced down to 10th place there. Needs to find in and around 2 tenths, 2 hundredths and 5 thousandths to be precise even, to get up and ahead of Felix Schwab.
420 next towards the line. Here comes Cas van Veltzen. So we've already seen Bruno Carr laying an absolute screamer of a time in the 380. Can Cas van Veltzen fight him back there? Needs 337 thousandths of a second of pole position. This is his last opportunity here to fight for the front row. 824 next to the line. Here comes Byron Forrest. We've just seen one Porsche across the line. Here comes the other. Across the line goes Byron Forrest, up and ahead of James Mason then. An all Porsche second row and all McLaren front row then. Across the line just now went the number 99. That was Leon Schumacher. 724 next across the line. Ethan Oliver finally lays in a time there. 8th fastest and ahead of LeBay. Milliston lays in a time there for 7th fastest. He's got one more opportunity here in qualifying. He's a single 100th of a second away from LeBay, who has just jumped the margin away from Oliver, now up to 6th. So this is going to be a real last lap dash for a lot of these drivers here. We can see that Christian LeBay, who's just jumped a few positions up to 6th in his last lap just gone. He's only 100th ahead of Melvin Milliston, is charging up for one final run here in Quali 1. Currently backed up behind the number 98 there. That's Felix Schwab in the BMW. He calls it quits there. So LeBay at the best of times looking to start 6th. Milliston's in the pits as well. So too is Oliver. So neither of those two will be jostling for any more positions in the middle and back of the top 10. Does the score get settled then between Cas van Veltzen, Bruno Carr and Tyler Vermaak? Down to the line then comes the 420. Across the line, he's close, but no cigar. Just over a 10th of a second to pole position. Bruno Carr bringing the gap so incredibly short between himself and Vermaak. Is Vermaak looking at a time extension here? The 128.040 set by the number 81. Clearly just not enough, despite the fact there is no one left on track to challenge that time, bar George Todd, who's out, I believe, on the track at the moment. So yes, there may yet be one more opportunity. We did see, though, that Todd's times did leave a lot to be desired, and that was quite a stark contrast to how things played out for him in Monza's qualifying. Felix Schwab just crossed the line there, up to 8th and ahead of Kevin Quain and Ethan Oliver. Here comes George Todd then to the line. Puts one time on the chart. That's 8th fastest. So pushes Felix Schwab down to 9th, Quain down to 10th, Oliver out of the top 10. The bottom line, though, Tyler Vermaak takes pole position by 7 thousandths of a second. Bruno Carr lines up with him on that front row. We'll get a full grid rundown in a moment's time then. Before we do that, let's quickly discuss the most recent bits of news. Of course, first was very hot off the plate in the world of Formula 1. Max Verstappen wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. An enormously large text at the top of our screens there. Let's just quickly... There we go, shorten that down. And wet racing, this is going to be a good one, folks. So, Max Verstappen wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. We also note that Carlos Sainz finished 3rd and received Driver of the Day for his efforts for a surprising result for Williams, much to the chagrin of McLaren and Ferrari. Then, the other bit of news today comes from the world of the British Touring Car Championship. Dan Lloyd, Tom Ingram and Sam Osborne win in Silverstone's rounds. Just gone, that wrapping up only just an hour ago. So, without further ado, let's get the discussions underway for the first of 2 races here in round 8 of the championship in downpour conditions here in the Red Bull Ring. Tyler Vermaak lines up on pole position alongside him then for the first time. Bruno Carr in the number 380 for a McLaren all front row. Cas van Veltzen and Byron Forrest make 3rd and 4th for an all Porsche second row. James Mason and Christian LeBay 5th and 6th. Melvin Milliston 7th. George Todd in 8th. Felix Schwab 9th and Kevin Quain rounds out the top 10. Ethan Oliver in 11th place, Ivan Sanchez and Sergio Belda, the two Holcianos, Ferraris 12th and 13th, Kyle Jenkins 14th, Leon Schumacher 15th, Alex Albert 16th, Michael Rushton 17th and Ben Cheeseman in 18th position. This is going to be quite a dramatic shift in circumstance. We were told by race control the chances of rain were exponentially low, almost impossible to suggest, but yet here we are, umbrella in hand, and it is absolutely soaked here at the Red Bull Ring for the first of 2 races. Only 10 minutes of rain predicted for a 30-minute race, so there could yet be the chance for things to dry up enough for the drivers to move off of the wets and onto the dry compound tyres by the end of today's race. But those chances do remain remarkably thin here, but with not a lot of time between each lap, there is going to be quite a lot of laps covered. That means more miles on track and more chances for a dry line to form. That really does look like quite tough rain to play against. In the now cancelled round yesterday, of the Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship, we saw conditions not too far from what we're seeing at the moment. 30-second warning then is given. The drivers will start their engines. We're on board with Tyler Vermack, who will lead us away for the start of this formation lap here for race 1 of 2 today. And these are going to be quite some challenging conditions. We already know that turn 1 can be really, really difficult, even in the dry. So throw in the adage of it being in the pouring wet conditions here. This is going to be quite a frightful drive from many. We wait here with Tyler Vermack to take us away. Get a look over the nose of the car, just so we've got a slightly better look of things on track for our track tour here. Starting things off on the run down towards Niki Lauda curve at turn 1. This incredibly sharp right-hander coming up. It's a heavy braking zone. One of the most polarizing sections of the Red Bull Ring. It's a section of the track that really leads to a lot of people either loving the track or hating it, is whether or not they can overcome this incredibly awkward first corner. That takes us on the run uphill. We already have one of the pit lane starts there for Kyle Jenkins, 113 starting from the pit lane. You can see the chicane either side of it here, and that's for the MotoGP layout as we head uphill toward turn 2. This kink to the left here, you can see lining up alongside Vermack is the 380. Cas van Velzen takes the MotoGP layout. I suppose if ever there was an opportunity to run the sort of Joker lap of this race, I imagine it would be during the formation lap down towards turn 3 then. And this is really been quite the area of contention across the world of motorsports, whether it's GTs, whether it's touring cars, whether it's Formula 1. Remus Corner is a death sentence for many. Down at turn 3 then, that incredibly sharp uphill right-hander takes us on the run down this back straight here. Now, normally it would be a major attacking spot under DRS in Formula 1. For our drivers today, they're going to be tiptoeing around each other on the run down to another heavy braking zone here. A little bit less sharp than turn 3 is turn 4 at Schlossgold, and it's parabolic, so tighter on entry, looser on exit. That'll give the drivers an opportunity to get down on the throttle, though side-by-side action we've seen does not go easily unpunished. So for Vermack, as he continues to lead the line down towards turn 5, now into turn 6 at Rauch. Or Rausch, not entirely sure how you choose to pronounce that, but this is one of the incredibly rare left-hand turns we see here at the Red Bull Ring. One of 3, as a matter of fact, gives you a 70% to 30% chance of turning left in this race at all. Then up through turn 7, the Worth curve. Sort of very tight, winding S section here. Very easy to run off to that right-hand side. We see there Bruno Carr literally getting nearly sideways, drifting the 380 right behind Tyler Vermack. Now we head down towards the last 2 corners there. As we head downhill after this crest here, turns 9 and 10, Rindt and Red Bull Mobile corner, to bring us to the end of a lap here at the Red Bull Ring. And with the tours and formalities out of the way, it is time for the utter madness of this circuit to unfurl. Over 30 minutes of racing here in round 8 of the championship. One of 2 opportunities for our drivers today as we stay on board with Tyler Vermack. We'll be getting down round turn 10 for the start of the lineup procedure. So then, as we go rolling, 9 one side of it, 8 on the other, 1 from the pit lane for 18 drivers here in round 8 of the championship for race 1 of 2 today in the pouring wet conditions here at the Red Bull Ring. Here we go then. Down towards the line, without further ado, we are green and racing for the first time of 2 today here at the Red Bull Ring. 30 minutes against the clock already. A great getaway by Tyler Vermack, an even better getaway by Cas van Velzen, already up and ahead of Bruno Carr. Looking further around the order as we see Bedlam erupt down at turn 1. Rather predictable, I'd say, given the circumstances. Seeing spinning across there, that was Melvin Milliston. We were watching in the view there for Alex Albert. There was a huge turnaround. There was plenty of cars caught up in the fray there. Yellow flags are out among them. Christian Lebay also caught up in the madness, as well as Melvin Milliston. So a disastrous start there from the midfield. Back in the green flag conditions, still trying to piece together exactly what's happened. The yellow flags are straight back out. This time at Remus, Bruno Carr is caught up there and is now stranded on the right-hand side of the track before the apex of turn 3. It has been a disaster for drivers across all fronts of today's starting grid for race 1 of 2. The pouring wet conditions have come rather unexpectedly to our drivers today, and where it may have rewarded drivers like Cas van Velzen, it has absolutely crushed the chances for drivers like I should say Milliston LeBay, and Bruno Carr. Now all three of those at the back of the grid. Watching on board at the moment with Tyler Vermaak. We'll be getting on board with Cas van Velzen in a moment's time. We take a look around the field. We can see Michael Rushton, Ethan Oliver and Alex Albert for a threes company here of Bentley Continentals running out through turn 8 on their way down towards turn 9 and 10. In the background there, Sergio Belda chasing them down from 12th position, I should say, on track here. Michael Rushton currently defending from Alex Albert. Ethan Oliver slowly escaping sight there in the number 724 up the field. You can see there up the order as well is an incredibly close fight for 4th place between Kevin Quain and James Mason. Quain's looking around the outside, a little bit of contact between the pair of them down towards turn 1 and Nicky Lauda curve. Here comes George Todd though, by the way. Bear in mind, he started from, I think this was 8th in today's session. He's now up to 4th. Mason right in his iron sights. We do want to try and get on board with the battle for the race lead. Vermaak v Van Velzen could be quite the exciting saga here. We're also seeing in equal parts a fight inside the top 5. You can see up the inside goes Felix Schwab on Kevin Quain. It's contact between the pair of them. The 98 gets the leg up through turn 3. George Todd now chasing down James Mason. Ivan Sanchez up to 7th. Ethan Oliver in 8th. What a chaotic start we have seen there in the opening 2 laps. Meanwhile, you can see Oliver there sizing up a move on Sanchez. It's so nearly contact between the pair of them. You can see as well for Felix Schwab, he shakes loose there of Kevin Quain, now dropping out behind Ivan Sanchez and Ethan Oliver after a disastrous run through turn 4. Now we want to try and get on board here. We're on board with Cas van Velzen as part of the fight for the race lead. The Porsche did battle with the McLaren over the course of Monza, and that was a spectacular fight. And now the circumstances could not be higher for these two. The stakes here are at an all-time high for this fight. The 420 versus the 81 now dictates the race lead. Bear in mind, they are far and away from the pack behind them. Meanwhile, I believe we've just seen a move there. George Todd could be up to 3rd. There's yet some fight back as he slides out through turn 10. Here comes James Mason and Felix Schwab for that matter. Let's see if we can try and catch on board with these drivers here. James Mason side by side with Felix Schwab. BMW versus BMW for the last of the podium positions. Through goes Schwab. Mason runs out wide. Here comes George Todd. Mason's up into the lead of this fight for 3rd place. You can see it's damn near 3 abreast on their way towards turn 2. This is brilliant stuff. You can barely see the corners there. The Ferrari tucked in on the BMW. Now up the inside goes George Todd on James Mason. Right behind them, that bright neon green, number 98. That's Felix Schwab. Then the bright blue, number 724. That's the Bentley of Ethan Oliver and Ivan Sanchez, and the white and green Ferrari. They're sandwiched in between the pair of them. So this is spectacular stuff here on the race start. Down towards Schlossgold we go at turn 4. The number 98 was looking perhaps at a move there on James Mason. James Mason now has his eyes affixed on the 25 in front of him, looking for payback to the podium here on George Todd in the number 25. Action every which way you look, and it's come at the cost for quite a few drivers here. I don't think a lot of people were expecting wet conditions, and it has all gone pear-shaped in the opening couple of laps there for quite a few drivers, among them Bruno Carr, Christian LeBay and Melvin Milliston. Leon Schumacher now one of the more recent casualties. He finds himself down in 16th place. Watching here with James Mason, big slide out through turn 9 at Rindt, now through turn 10 at Red Bull Mobile. There is absolutely no grip available for some of these cars today. Flying away at the moment is George Todd. Now Felix Schwab looking for 4th place against James Mason. The two are side by side once again for another lap here, down into the Nicky Lauda curve. Now trying a slightly different strategy. I believe that may be enough there for Felix Schwab. James Mason takes a big chunk of the runoff at turn 1. Now Ethan Oliver comes to fight for 5th place against him. This could get very exciting here. Let's see if we can catch on board with Oliver. You can see, I believe that was side by side, but it's so hard to try and track a lot of this action here. Side by side, yes, so it turns out, between Oliver and Mason. Battle of the turbo engines here, V8 versus inline 6, as we go barreling out of turn 3. Right behind them, bear in mind, is Ivan Sanchez and Byron Forrest. Sergio Belda not too far away either. It's contact for George Todd. You can see spiraling out of control across the track. James Mason clatters into Ethan Oliver. It has all gone horribly wrong. Let's see what has gone on for them down the road here. I believe it started off as slowing down massively. What happened there to George Todd? He slowed down Mason couldn't get out of the way in time, smashes into the 25, then smashes into the 724. What has gone on there? That is disastrous. 25 looks to be in serious disrepair right now. If we can try and catch on board at some point with him, we'll check in on the status of George Todd. That has gone catastrophically wrong. Slowing down the back straight. Now we've got another yellow flag out here. It's for the 99. That is of Leon Schumacher, stranded there out of turn 10. You can see on the left-hand side of that opening straight, Melvin Milliston's into the pits as well. Bruno Carr still in this session. We're starting to see the death toll rise here at the Red Bull Ring. See if we can get a view here from Ben Cheeseman's point of view. That yellow flag still in effect for Sector 3. Kyle Jenkins is up the road there, watching with Cheeseman in the 114. As you can see, actually having got going there was the 99, Leon Schumacher, back on the road. Now on board with Michael Rushton, 0.2 of a second from a fight with Christian LeBay. Alex Albert right behind him as well. Three-man's company for the last of the top 10 positions. So getting a look as we're nearly 10 minutes into this session, it is still incredibly hair-raisingly close between Vermaak and Van Veltzen. Felix Schwab now in third, Ivan Sanchez fourth, Byron Forrest in fifth, Ethan Oliver sixth, James Mason in seventh, Kevin Quain in eighth, Sergio Belda in ninth. Bear in mind, having a look here from Sanchez to Belda, so to both of the Holkianos cars are all within around a second of one another. Then behind them we have LeBay, Rushton, Albert, Jenkins, Cheeseman, Todd, Schumacher, Carr and Milliston. It has been a disastrous start for quite a few here, and we will be catching on board with some of the drivers in the middle of this fight later on towards the middle of that top 10, but we want to get a look back on board with the fight at the front row because it's as close as it's ever been here since the start of today's race. Cas Van Veltzen could yet be looking at a chance to fight for the race lead. We're on board now with the number 420. Now fighting for the lead. Vermaak right in front of him there, playing defensive against the 420. The 81 has got his hands full here. Started on a very confident race lead. Has been able to dodge a lot of the action there in the opening couple of laps, especially down through turns 1 and 3. Now trouble has found his way to him in the form of Cas Van Veltzen. Started on the second row, slid his way through to a podium, now to second. It is the perfect storm, really, for Cas Van Veltzen today. Looking at some of those circumstances now, we weren't expecting rain at all. There was almost a net zero chance of there being wet weather for today's race. Then looking back at the balance of performance, Porsche finally find themselves with a double-figure weight reduction. All of the stars really seem to have aligned for Cas Van Veltzen today to run up for the race lead here with Porsche. Looking at those previous wins over the course of the season, Van Veltzen did take a win in Belgium. That was during his time with Ford. This could yet be his first opportunity to take home gold with Porsche, but he's got Tyler Vermaak for company. Vermaak fighting for his first win this season. And I believe, now I want to take a look back through the records here because looking back into Season 2, Vermaak was technically the race winner at the Circuit of the Americas. And then that was taken off of him and given to Diman Ivanov after a ruling at the end of that race. Now, could this actually be the chance here for Tyler Vermaak's first ever Sunday League win? Well, he's got to get past Cas Van Veltzen here. Is now up on his rear quarter, hunting him down into turn 1. Vermaak runs out wide. Van Veltzen right on his rear quarter now, looking for around the outside as we head up towards turn 3 at Remus. First next, though, is turn 2. Slight kink to the left here. This is the slow build into a very explosive corner indeed. Remus then, turn 3. Vermaak to the inside. Van Veltzen around the outside, trying to leverage a little bit more momentum. Now back into the rear quarter here, back in a slipstream, I should say, between himself and the 81. Cas Van Veltzen is right on top now of Tyler Vermaak, looking for second time's a charm. Now we've seen how effective the braking has been for the Porsche in dry conditions. There was a little bit of a rub there down through Schlossgold, so back behind Vermaak is Cas Van Veltzen. This could get nuclear here. These two are so claustrophobically close to one another as we go heading down into turn 6. Quickly just taking a look here. These two now out through turns 7 and 8 of the Worth curve. We want to take a look down the order to see quickly what the status of affairs is inside that fight, inside the top 10. James Mason 7th, Kevin Quain in 8th, Sergio Belda in 9th. Christian LeBay is hunting down the remainder of the top 10. We're back on board then with Cas Van Veltzen for the time being. Both of them sliding. You can see the back end stepping away for both the Porsche and the McLaren. Down towards turn one we go then. You can see he's tiptoeing around those curbs now. Tyler Vermaak understands the limits of his vehicle. He spent quite a long time now with McLaren over the course of both Season 2 and now Season 3, where he did quickly dabble with McLaren's 720S. And now his move away from Lexus over to McLaren. It's definitely been one of the more controversial decisions of Vermaak's career, but you can see just like his move toward Lexus, it has definitely paid off because he has got quite a lot of confidence now behind the wheel. Cas van Veltsen's move away from Ford to Porsche was definitely one to discuss over the course of this season, and just two in the same, really. These two drivers have taken enormous risks with vehicle choice, and it has paid off massively. Now you can see it is paramount in this display here as both of them now get side by side down towards turn 5, now turn 6. The 81 holds the inside, the 420 around the outside. It's going to go early on the brakes there to try and go later onto the apex. You can see grabbing a little bit too much curb there, very nearly turned around Cas van Veltsen. Vermaak there with a hint of understeer through turn 7. Vermaak now incredibly vulnerable on the exit of turn 8. Van Veltsen had an absolutely astronomical run through the Worth curve, but it's not enough to put him side by side with the McLaren on his run to turn 9. He tucks back in behind. I think he's just trying to chip away now at Vermaak's confidence and lead into one explosive overtake. Now on the exit of turn 10, chasing him down towards turn 1. We'll catch up with these two in a moment's time. We take a look around the field here for Byron Forrest, another one of the two Porsches. You can see the extent of the damage from earlier on for James Mason. Now, looking back into the replays for that incident, it was George Todd slowed down the back straight between turns 3 and 4. There was clattered by Mason, who couldn't get out of the way. The spray obscured the Ferrari from view, and then the domino effect was him slamming into Ethan Oliver in the 724 Bentley in the foreground there. That was all in that fight for the top 5. Ethan Oliver now in that top 5, as a matter of fact. The 68 yellow flags for Melvin Milliston. That could be him out of race 1. So looking around that field once more, we can see that Kyle Jenkins and George Todd half a second for one another in that fight for 14th position. Then looking around the field, we can see side-by-side action again. Now we're on the perspective of Tyler Vermaak. It's contact a second time and a second lap in a row now between these two. Cas van Veltsen right alongside, now tucks back in behind as we exit turn 4 into turn 5, now to turn 6. He's really trying. It's like there, you can see the front lock there. So little grip available over the nose for the Porsche heading down into turn 6. And it's the same story for the McLaren. These two skating on ice here in sector 2 and 3. Out through turn 8 we go. The gap now 0.2 of a second. Meanwhile, the gap between Felix Schwab and Ivan Sanchez has closed to 3 seconds. Those two could be fighting in the next 15 or so minutes. We are approaching that halfway mark very, very quickly here in the Red Bull Ring, and what has definitely been quite a head turn around. None of us were expecting downpour. We can see the rain has subsided, so the track is slowly getting more and more dry. Now, will we be seeing the dry compounds come out by the end of today's race? It is a bit of wishful thinking. Trying for the inside there, you can see he was definitely poking his nose into it. Cas van Veltsen still playing mind games with his opponent here. Catch on with these two in a moment's time here. We see Ben Cheeseman under siege from Alex Albert in the Bentley. Behind him, Kyle Jenkins under siege by George Todd. 2 battles for the price of 1. Alex Albert is looking for the inside down into Rint corner at turn 9. Cheeseman blocks him off though. Later on the brakes, cuts the nose of that Bentley off. Quickly just checking around the field again. We want to see what is going on with that front row. Cas van Veltsen now forced to the outside. Goes for a much later apex here. He won't be fooled a third time around. Third time could be the charm here. He's got a very good exit here, but that McLaren has just got a little bit more grunt. Down low, they are practically pushing each other down towards turn 6. Much early on the brakes, trying to let Vermaak run himself out of road. Down at turn 6 we go, then to turn 7. It is such a delicate dance between these two cars here for position. Neither one driver seeming to have more advantage over the other. Vermaak has got a bit more of a powerful position to play for here, but he is not by any means capable of shaking off Van Veltsen in this current state. The McLaren is giving it absolutely everything and is praying for a mistake out of that Porsche. He's playing things nice and calm, doesn't want to overexert himself, especially not in these conditions and not given these two's position in the championship. This is second and third we're talking about with Van Veltsen and Vermaak. Vermaak as well, only a single point ahead of Christian Lebay. Up the inside, then at turn 1 goes Cas van Velzen going long over the runoff zone. Goes Tyler Vermaak. There could yet be the opportunity for a switchback. He'll be on the inside at turn 2, but the outside for turn 3. Cas van Velzen now side by side with Tyler Vermaak. These two continuing a saga over the course of the last 2 races. Now switching back to the inside. This is an explosive move for the control of the race lead here. Now moving back into position. A switchback out of Remus. Unbelievable. Get a look at that on the replay. They're side by side on the run down to turn 4. We may have to cut away from this here because it is incredibly close-knit between these two. They're side by side currently on the exit of turn 4. And there was contact there just as we got back on board with them. Cas van Velzen will be furious with what went on there. Sadly, we won't have the replays to be able to help us out. There was a little tap there out of turn 4 between the pair of them. It is a miracle then Van Velzen survived the knock. But that switch over the nose was absolutely diabolical. And then once more to have one switchback turn into another is something completely different. These are two drivers operating at the absolute apex of their ability. I have never seen the like here. Now that gap separated by 0.7 of a second. Could there be damage after that knock at turn 4 between those two? Van Velzen having lost 0.6 over the last lap to Vermaak's time. We'll catch on with these two later on. Byron Forrest, one of the other Porsches in this race today, in 6th place, 0.8 of a second behind Ivan Sanchez. Ethan Oliver, I want to point this out as well, has been slowly working his way in the background up to 4th place. This is a remarkable performance when you consider what the kind of odds of Oliver was up against in the last appearance he had in the Sunday League, in that very same 724 Bentley. This has been a real race to remember, and we're not going anywhere after today's race because we've got another on the horizon. So it's onwards and upwards for the British talent in the 724 on his once-in-a-blue-moon appearance to GT Racing. Ethan Oliver is having an absolute field day in the Bentley. The 212 is in trouble. Now, we want to try and catch on board. I believe that to be Michael Rushton having a spot of bother there. Is now down the pit lane road. Coming into the pits. Could be damage on the Bentley. Getting slowed down there in time for the timing line. There's Ethan Oliver. We spoke on him just a moment ago. Let's try and catch back on board then with our two race leaders. That gap still maintained at around 6 to 7 tenths of a second. So something seriously untoward had happened to the performance of the 420 after that knock at turn 4. Whatever it has done, it has slowly tipped the scales back in Vermaak's favour. And we check on board with another fight here in today's session. Byron Forrest we're on board with now. Now, we've been keeping an eye on this fight as it's developed. Now, as we make our way out toward turns 9 and 10, it is the fight for 5th place here between Forrest and Sanchez. You can see the conditions getting much, much better than they were on the race start. The rain mostly subsiding now. The drivers having to deal with a little bit more spray than rain. Down towards turn 1. We saw Forrest duck all the way to the right-hand side of the track trying to cool the tyres down. So is that a suggestion there that the wet tyres are slowly dropping out of favour? I'd say the conditions are a little too wet for the dry tyres to come out right now. Had this been a 60-minute long race, I would not have hesitated to suggest that drivers would be thinking of that right about now. And with only 10 minutes left to go, no one dares to try and do that. Forrest now 0.7 of a second from Ivan Sanchez. Let's take a look around the field here with 10 minutes to go. Vermaak and Van Velzen still very close to one another there, but the last interval showed the gap to be up at around a second. Vermaak there cutting over turn 8, sorry, I should say, down towards turn 9. We now go. We were watching with that fight for Byron Forrest. We'll quickly tap in to see what's gone on there. Ivan Sanchez maintains 5th position. Forrest in 6th. So looking at where things stand with 10 minutes left to go, Vermaak leads this race here, the Red Bull Ring, for one of 2 races today. Cas van Velzen not too far behind in 2nd place. Felix Schwab looks to be on a real turnaround drive here. Bear in mind, when we first saw Schwab this season, he was with Mercedes and was really, really struggling to find his footing. Struggle no more, so it seems, for the German, as he's up to 3rd on an absolutely historic run. Then looking at it here, Ethan Oliver in 4th place. Another massive turnaround performance for the 724, much like the 98. Ivan Sanchez in 5th place, Byron Forrest in 6th, James Mason in 7th, Sergio Belda in 8th, Kevin Quain in 9th, and Christian Lebay in the top 10. That's a great turnaround given what happened to the Aston Martin on the start of today's race, with 3 seconds between himself and Kevin Quain, his fellow teammate at the Malwa Racing Team, also himself hunting down Sergio Belda. There could yet be a chance on the horizon here for Lebay to make his way as far up, I would say, as possibly 8th. Then oh my word, I'm really struggling for my words today here, folks. Ben Cheeseman in 11th position, Alex Albert in 12th, Carl Jenkins in 13th, and George Todd into the pits from 14th. Could that be him throwing the towel in today? He's going to drop plenty of more positions back through the field with Leon Schumacher. Now, bear in mind, these drivers were originally the 4 and the 48. They're now the 98 and the 99. Schumacher down in 15th. He was, of course, caught up in that massive incident at the start of today's race. Michael Rushton in the pit lane at the moment from 16th. That could be the end of the line then for the 212. Same story for Melvin Millicent and Bruno Carr. So this is absolutely bizarre what we're seeing here in the Red Bull Ring. Bear in mind, there's still one more race after this one and another qualifying session to go with. We now see how things play out here. Under 8 minutes left to go. They're back in the full swing of things here. Vermaak having a bit of a spot of bother over turn 1 has definitely dropped him now into the jaws of the number 420 of Cas van Velzen. We'll catch up with those two in a moment here. We see Byron Forrest right on the heels of Ivan Sanchez. Both of them ducking to the right-hand side, trying to cool the tyres down, so it seems. Now heading down towards turn 1 of the Niki Lauda curve. Sanchez having a less than ideal run. Byron Forrest is not struggling for grip this time around. He's side by side, nearly there with the 91. It's going to be a drag race down to turn 2. Now we want to quickly just draw our attention to what's going on between these two. Nothing at the moment. So Byron Forrest is looking for the inside on Sanchez. Does not go for it. Knows that the grip is just not permissible for him to go for a classic late stage Porsche lunge as we saw back in Monza. Not this time around. Sanchez maintains position. Sergio Belda, you can see his teammate at the Holkianos Motorsports team, is seriously in trouble now because Kevin Quain is right on his heels, 0.5 of a second between the Mustang and the Ferrari. George Todd and Leon Schumacher clashing there for 14th. Todd running all the way off track now, drops behind Schumacher. Let's get a look then with our leading pair. It's half a second between Van Velzen and Vermaak. 6.5 minutes to go, functionally looking at 4 more laps here before the end of today's race. Could be 5 as a matter of fact. Down towards turn 1 we go. 6 minutes left to go then. Half a second is such a carefully maintained gap as it stands right now between Van Velzen and Vermaak. Let's see if we can get the attacking point of view of things. We just quickly check there down the pit road as we see James Mason currently being pursued by Melvin Milliston. Actually, no, sorry, by Sergio Belda and Kevin Quain. Melvin Milliston was in the way of things on the standings there for the left-hand side of our screens, which we base the greater majority of our data off of. So now we're back on board with Cas van Velzen. These two have been the stars of race 1. Only one of them can come home with the race win. Could Tyler Vermaak then be on his chances for a first ever in Sunday League history? He was denied the opportunity back in Season 2. He could yet become South Africa's first Sunday League winner, bringing the tally up. Now, I want to take a look back to my records just to verify what I'm seeing before my eyes here. I will just quickly look back through a few of this as we stay on board with Van Velzen and Vermaak. So attempting to get an understanding as to what we're dealing with today, as we could be seeing the premise of history be made here at the Red Bull Ring. That gap now has definitely opened up a tad to 0.6 of a second between Van Velzen and Vermaak.
Now, I have just taken a look through my records. So, yes, the tally would be brought up right now. Currently, it sits at 7 countries to have heralded a race winner here in the NLRL Sunday League over the course of its 3 seasons of operation. That being Great Britain, the Netherlands, Sweden, the United States of America, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Belgium. So that tally could yet go up to 8 here. Vermaak could be seeing history defined here in the first of 2 races today. 4 minutes left to go between himself and Van Velzen. We'll catch up with these two in a moment's time. We can see the Byron Forrest now up and ahead of Ivan Sanchez and maintains position there, now in the top 5, 8.3 seconds from Ethan Oliver. Belder still holding off Kevin Quain. That gap between himself and Christian Lebay further down the order, 3.5 seconds and closing. 3.5 minutes left to go here. The world on Belder's shoulders. Both him and Sanchez looking at very solid points in the team's championship. Holkianos already up to 3rd, with even more points on the way coming into the second race of today later on. There's still a great opportunity for a turnaround at the Holkianos Motorsports team. A very late entry into the championship, but these two drivers have been welcome additions to the Sunday League grid. So looking as we enter the final minutes of this race, you can see Vermaak and Van Velzen have been inseparable. They've spent the last 27 minutes locked in combat for that leading position. Van Velzen now holds on to the fastest lap. He's half a second away from Tyler Vermaak down into turn 3 at Remus. You can see it is definitely getting closer and closer to dry conditions, but no one driver will yield onto those dry tyres. Further down the line, Felix Schwab on a real turnaround puts himself up to 3rd. Ethan Oliver is closing the gap. So could there be a fight for 3rd place? It's definitely in the high realm of possibility, but it's going to take a serious deep dig drive here by the 724. Byron Forrest then up to 5th. Ivan Sanchez in 6th. James Mason in 7th. But Belder is right behind him in 8th position. Sergio Belder looking for position around the outside. Did have a look at the inside, but was covered off there by the 413. Tries for around the outside. Ultimately just loses more momentum. Kevin Quain behind them. And Christian Lebay has sliced the gap down. Admittedly, this is much to the chagrin of Kevin Quain. He has dropped quite a lot of time there to Sergio Belder, who's definitely woken up out of his slumber at the last couple of minutes of today's race, here in race 1 of 2 for round 8 of the championship. Now he picks up right onto the back end of the 413. A wounded James Mason was one of the casualties down that back straight we saw earlier on when George Todd slowed down. Some kind of issue for the 25. The 413 just couldn't mind his way out of the spray in time there. There was not an awful lot he could have done. He was locked side by side going down that back straight. Tries to hold his nerve here in the closing minutes of today's race. You can see the gap now between the leading pair of Vermaak and Van Velzen has started opening up massively. Tyler Vermaak could yet be on the chances to make Sunday League history here at the Red Bull Ring. Looking down the order, we can see an incredibly close fight between George Todd and Leon Schumacher. Ferrari versus BMW for 14th position on track. They make their way down towards turn 9 and turn 10. Another very close gap. We're still keeping an eye on this one. Sergio Belder versus James Mason. It's action every which way you look here. Schumacher runs it out wide. Todd in 14th opens the taps up there. Schumacher drops behind. Ethan Oliver, I want to point this out, has clawed the gap in. Could be looking at a podium here in the Red Bull Ring, in a Bentley no less. This could be remarkable stuff for the 724. Belder right to the back end of Mason. We can see the gap now for Van Velzen, and Vermaak has opened up to 2.6 seconds. If there was a chance of catching Vermaak, it has surely disappeared now. He'll be heading on to the final lap of this race, but there's still a lot left to be decided here in race 1 of 2 at the Red Bull Ring. Sergio Belder still in pursuit then of James Mason. We are drawing down to the end then of race 1 of 2 today. Don't go anywhere. We've got another 5-minute free practice, another 10-minute quali, and another 30-minute race on the horizon here at the Red Bull Ring. What a way to kick things off then as we enter the twilight chapters of Season 3 of the Sunday League. Watching down towards turn 9 and 10. Here goes Sergio Belder and James Mason. We'll be catching on board in a moment's time with the race leader, Tyler Vermaak. He's currently out of turn 3 on his way to turn 4. Van Velzen not far behind him. And now we quickly just see what is the going rates here for Schwab v Oliver. It's BMW versus Bentley, and the charge of the Continental here looks to be barreling down towards turn 3 at Remus.
Ethan Oliver could clinch this one in the last couple of laps of today's race. In fact, this is the final opportunity he'll have. The race leader is out in front of him. Tyler Vermaak will draw that line in the sand, but who will cross in third? This could be incredibly exciting here. So we'll have to catch up with these two in a moment's time. It is still very, very close to the line, but something is well and truly assured here for Tyler Vermaak. He has waited long, he has fought hard, he has fought diligently, and now the tally of race-winning nations draws up to 8th as winning on what is kind of home for him because he lives here in Austria. It is finally the victory day for Tyler Vermaak. He takes the checkered flag to win here in the Sunday League. He's waited long, long for that one. Denied at the circuit, the Americans wins in Red Bull Ring. Now we get to see how does the penny drop here between Felix Schwab and Ethan Oliver. Down to the line we go then. It's nearly neck and neck between the Bentley and the BMW, but on one of the closest finishing margins of today's race, Felix Schwab takes home third, Ethan Oliver in fourth. Remarkable stuff from both drivers there on that second row. Even more remarkable stuff from Cas van Velzen and the race winner of race 1 of 2 today, Tyler Vermaak, finally victorious in the Sunday League. Very little argument about that one. He has fought very, very hard for that. Now, there was admittedly that contact down at turn 4. We will wonder how that gets played out, but Vermaak, fair and square after that point, crosses the line victorious. George Todd takes home the fastest lap and finishes 14th. So I believe, could we have just seen onto dries there for George Todd? A gamble that may have paid off. He is now denied points from that top 5. Byron Forrest then 5th, James Mason 6th. We'll get the full result in a moment's time. LeBay, having fought up above his expected position, currently resides 7th, so a real turnaround for the 119. We'll get the full results up in a moment's time, but that has surely got to be a sigh of relief for Tyler Vermaak. He has finally clinched it here in the Sunday League. Bear in mind, one more race still to play for, so we've got to do this all over again here in the Red Bull Ring. I've seen a few disconnects there. The drivers do know we have a second race today, right? Oh, wow. What a race that was then. And now looking back into our schedule for today. Now we bring back up the regulations for today's race. Now we're just out of race 1. We're heading into free practice 2, quali 2 and race 2 in a moment's time before we draw a close here, the broadcast week here on TRTN, and draw a close to round 8 of the NLRL Sunday League. Now taking a look where we're at the moment, we're still in round 8. We'll be heading to round 9 and round 10 in a moment, well, not in a moment, in the next 2 weeks. And that'll be one more medium length round and one more double sprint. Now that is a quite stark number of people leaving. I don't think they realise there is another race. Now you can see the final results there. Tyler Vermaak wins in the Red Bull Ring. Cas van Velzen 2nd, Felix Schwab 3rd, Ethan Oliver 4th, Byron Forrest 5th, James Mason 6th, Christian LeBay in 7th, Kevin Quain in 8th, Sergio Belda 9th, Ben Cheeseman in the top 10, Kyle Jenkins in 11th place, I should say, Alex Albert in 12th, Ivan Sanchez 13th, George Todd 14th with the fastest lap. So now on to the... Oh, hang on just a moment. No, not qualifying as a matter of fact. Got ahead of myself. We are in for another 5 minutes of free practice, and the drivers have suddenly gotten wise to the fact that yes, there is actually another race coming up. So now a lot of people are joining back out of panic there, I imagine. We will catch on board with the driver who's just made their way out onto the track. The number 25 of George Todd. Now, where did it all go wrong here for Todd in that last race? We saw he was stranded down between turns 3 and 4. Not entirely sure what had gone on there, as it wasn't a case where he had a bad exit of Remus. It was halfway up the road that the car just gave out. He was slowing to the left-hand side and then was clocked around the back end, spun 180 degrees and against the barriers by James Mason. Admittedly, the spray was so intense, Mason had very little time to react. Not only that, he was side by side. So for Todd now, he's trying to get the extra numbers in just so that he can get himself in better stead for Quali 2 today. Also out on the track at the moment, Christian LeBay and Melvin Milliston, 2 of the casualties among many in that opening lap cascade out through turns 1 and then continuing into turn 3. We did speak on it earlier. Those two sections of the track are serious crowd splitters. So I've just heard as well, having a look into the server, it wasn't drivers intentionally leaving. There was actually a wave of disconnects after the first race. Drivers will hopefully be trying to join back in the next 4 or so minutes. We have seen now 17 cars back in, so we are missing 1 at this time. See Bruno Carr having rejoined the session as well, the 380, and they're up to the magic number 18. Cas van Veltsen rejoins today's session as well in the 420. What a first race, though. I don't think any of us were expecting wet conditions. I certainly wasn't myself. I wasn't clued in on as to whether or not we would be seeing wet racing creep in to today's round of the championship. But hell, if it hasn't come at quite the surprise and with quite a positive effect, I would say. Now, despite obviously the calamity that was lap 1 and 2, I would still say that has proven to be a fantastic round of the championship. It was certainly a great time skating around in the wet and wild conditions for the front runners, that being Cas van Veltsen and Tyler Vermaak. Vermaak finally claiming victory after long last there, was denied last season at the Circuit of the Americas, finally takes the gold here in the Red Bull Ring. That's got to be quite an emotional moment for Vermaak. He's representing South Africa, but he lives in Austria, so this has got to be really quite an emotional moment for him in the number 81. He has fought very, very hard for that one. He put every foot right in that, and he tried his hardest for the defense. Now, I'm not 100% sure because we were reviewing an incident from down at turn 3 when the turn 4 clash happened between himself and the 420. I don't have the data to hand at this time, so we're not going to try and make any judgments on what went on between those two, but turn 4 is turn 4 on this track, and it really just, if it was going to happen at any corner between two drivers, it was going to be here at Schlossgold. We watch now through turn 4, goes Melvin Milliston. Just under 2 minutes left to go then in free practice. We'll be shortly on to the discussion of Quali 2. We'll be bringing back up the data from Quali 1, as that could still yet play quite the precedent in today's second qualifying session. George Todd across the line for a 128.897. Milliston out through turn 8 towards turn 9 and 10 to finish off his flying lap before the end of free practice today. We did see it was quite a... now, maybe lackluster would be an insulting choice of words, but it was definitely a lot to be desired for qualifying out of Milliston. And the same story as well for another driver caught up in the major crunch of lap 1, that being Christian Lebay. Both of them found themselves towards the middle and back of the top 10, which is definitely quite a danger zone even in a wet race. So we've just got word there from Cas van Veltsen. He lost the car. Tyler did not hit him. So that's our apologies there for assuming there was a clash between the pair. It's just that we only saw the second half of it where the Porsche quite violently jutted out to the right-hand side. The back end, having gone to the right hand of our screen, would have gone out to his left. Did look like a collision, but wasn't. So that really does seal the deal there. There will be no post-race investigation for Vermaak. The 81 has clinched that one fair and square, finally adding himself to the list of race winners here in the Sunday League. That has really got to be quite a gratifying feeling for Vermaak. There's rain in 10 minutes, but it's going to be damp for qualifying, says Race Control. So this could still turn out to be an exceptionally exciting second half of today's round of the NLRL Sunday League, brought to you by Malwar Transport and live exclusively through TRTN. Now, getting a look at those overall race winners, you can now see joining the ranks there. Tyler Vermaak puts himself on level pegging here with Cassier, Van Veltsen, Rojnov, Skeen, Ivanov, Van Manen, Putuk and Baptiste, and putting himself in that joint 4th position. Then you can see the top 3 still a joint 2nd between Wesley Kuiper and Jason Bush, leading the charge after Monza with 7 race wins now. Melvin Milliston, our current championship leader here in Season 3. So chances for damp conditions in qualifying. Now, what does that necessarily spell out in the chances for the racing conditions? Now, we are hoping for a dry race. We were hoping to see that over the course of the first race. It was quite a dramatic shift in the weather from Quali 1 into Race 1. Could we be seeing a little bit of a different qualifying play out in front of us in a moment's time. We'll watch here with George Todd down towards the line before the start of qualifying 2, and he invalidates over the run of turn 9 and 10. So definitely darker conditions. We were told it was going to get in towards evening racing here by the end of our run in round 8. Melvin Milliston then out of the gates first once more, right behind him James Mason. Now I think had James Mason had a little further position up in the paddock, he would have been the early bird of today. He was definitely quicker off of the line, but Milliston being much closer to the timing line there, or the pit limiter line I should say, on the exit of the pit lane, has put him out in front once more. Bringing back up the data then, admittedly outdated as it was for qualifying 1, it still plays quite equal precedent in today, and we'll bring back up the timings that we found out of Bruno Carr, which is not featured on this chart because this was data captured by Simbot, and the data we have to hand in regards to Bruno Carr, we discussed this last qualifying, was in the pre-race practice sessions coming into round 8. But looking at it once again, we are looking at a Vermaak and Van Velzen front row. Milliston in 3rd, Oliver 4th, LeBay 5th, Forrest 6th, Jenkins 7th, Sanchez 8th, and Todd 9th. Based off of that data alone, looking at the balance of performance, Aston Martin still at the top of the charts here for weight reduction, 40 kilos once again to the 119 of Christian LeBay, the only Aston Martin V12 advantage in this championship. The 296 will be getting 20 kilos chopped off. That's one of the largest weight reduction packages we've seen for Ferrari all season, and the same story for Porsche with 17 kilos shed off, so that's going to be great for Cas Van Velzen and Byron Forrest, the 2 Porsches in the championship so far. Bentley losing 6 kilos just like last time around, Lamborghini gaining 3, same story for Ford, Mercedes gaining 5, McLaren gaining 16, so not a great time for Milliston, or by that contrast for Vermaak, but in the case of the latter, he made the most of very uneven circumstances, wet racing, the constant pressure of Van Velzen at his rear, and a less than beneficial weight gain package for the ballast, where the adversary car, the Porsche, had in fact lost almost exactly the same amount of weight. 16 kilos though nonetheless for McLaren, 20 kilos for BMW. We still watch here with Melvin Milliston onto the first of our flying laps here in Quali 2. 7.5 minutes left to go. You can see mist hanging yonder the hills here over Spielberg, Austria, here in the region of Styria. I think something that a lot of the cameras tend to fail to show, especially over in Formula 1, is just the sheer verticality of this track. It is a track that runs almost constantly on an incline or decline. There is very little in the way of level ground to be found here at the Red Bull Ring, and that makes it tenfold worse, as we saw in last race just gone, when wet conditions roll in, because there's very little opportunity, especially up or downhill, for there to be a sufficient dry line, as the water constantly rushing in over that, and compound that with heavy rainfall at the start. It was an almost definite recipe for disaster heading up through Remus for the first time. As we saw, took out plenty of drivers in the fray of it, and even before that, down at turn 1 here. So across the line, a 128.887 by Melvin Milliston. LeBay 2nd fastest, Mason 3rd fastest. Now onto the charts there, Michael Rushton 4th fastest in the 212 Bentley. Behind him there was, I believe, one of the Ferraris, number 25, George Todd, didn't set a time there. Vermaak did. The number 81, now 2 tenths exactly off of Melvin Milliston's 128.8. 6.5 minutes to go then. Across the line comes Bruno Carr, the number 380, back onto the top 2 rows of the timing charts. Interceded, though, for 3rd by an exact replica of the time of the 81, the number 420 of Cas Van Velzen, exactly level with Tyler Vermaak's time. Both of them having set a 129.087. Down to the 1,000th exactly between the 81 and the 420. If that doesn't go length to show you the extent of how evenly matched these 2 drivers are, I'm not sure what will. Nearly into halfway of Quali 2. Not a lot of time for these drivers to wrap things up, and with only 8 times on the charts, we still wait for another 10 drivers to make their way onto the timing charts today. Right now, it's Milliston from Vermaak and Van Velzen. Then Carr, then LeBay, Mason, Rushton, and Sanchez. next to the line at the moment, the 68 of Melvin Milliston. Could he open the taps up here from a 128.887? Here comes the number 68 to the line. 5.5 minutes to go, and he does, and by quite a ways there. 535 thousandths of a second of improvement over that last lap alone. Here comes, I believe next is Christian LeBay next to the line. Doesn't find his way up and ahead of Bruno Carr, but I tell you who does. It's George Todd up to second on that last lap just gone. Intercedes both Vermaak and Van Velzen. Here comes Vermaak to the line. Does find an improvement. Van Velzen just making his way round turn 10. Can he find the leg up over Vermaak? Now, as Bruno Carr crossed the line a moment ago, was up to second. Van Velzen crosses the line, and like Vermaak finds an improvement, but not enough for position. The 824 having crossed the line a moment ago as well. That was Byron Forrest, currently 12th, and you can see 11.8 seconds off, so there was definitely quite a fluke there for the number 824. Still got plenty of time left in today's session to make up for that. Across the line just gone now was Ethan Oliver, 8th fastest, and was definitely one of the wonder kid performances of that last race gone. Was on the cusp there. One more lap and he could have been on the podium up against Felix Schwab. Speaking of, Schwab in 9th position, so now the Bentley has got the upper hand in qualifying by just around, looking at it here, I want to say 85 thousandths of a second. So incredibly close margins between the 98 and the 724. Across the line just a moment ago was the 36, another one of the Bentleys here, Alex Albert. Michael Rushton up and ahead of him by nearly 7/10 of a second. 4 minutes left to go. Next to the line comes Christian LeBay. Then behind him, the 413 of James Mason. LeBay 6th as he crosses the line, stays there. Mason 7th as he crosses the line, stays there as well. Those two incredibly close to one another. 15 thousandths of a second in their current standing between 6th and 7th. The 25 of George Todd crosses the line, couldn't find an improvement enough for position, maintains a front row start nonetheless. That is incredibly tough there by the 25. 420 next to the line. Here comes Cas Van Velzen for the back of the top 5, crosses the line. Does he go ahead of Vermaak? No, not this time around. The 824 next to the line goes Byron Forrest from 9th. And we did just, believe, miss him there as he actually has dropped a position behind of that of Leon Schumacher. Christian LeBay now pushed down to 7th. Ethan Oliver crosses the line ahead of the Aston Martin. Now pushing Bentley up ahead of Aston to be the second fastest British manufacturer on this field after McLaren. 36, another one of the Bentleys here. Alex Albert on his way to the line. Here comes the American in the 36 across the line from 15th. Goes ahead of Sergio Belda there for 14th on the grid. The 119 is next, so here comes Christian LeBay leading a charge there. Behind him is James Mason, then behind him is the 25 of George Todd. Season 1's champion here, 3rd in the championship, actually 4th, sorry, in the championship. He's off Vermaak by 1 point. That's set to open up by quite a ways there. Across the line goes LeBay. No improvement this time around. Did we see an improvement from Mason? No. Did we see an improvement from Todd? Yes, but not enough for position. That gap now tantalizingly close at the front row between Todd and Milliston. 45 thousandths of a second with 2 minutes to spare. The 98 next to the line. Here comes Felix Schwab from 11th. Goes 6th fastest ahead of Ethan Oliver by an incredibly close margin. We just heard of a disconnect there from Kevin Quain. So a bit of trouble for the North American drivers. And that seems to be a sentiment carried across the Americas as well, because Bruno Carr had some connection troubles earlier on. He's only off from Cas Van Velzen's front of the second row, last of the podium time there by 22 thousandths of a second. He disconnected after race 1. Still enough to have his times logged on the chart there, though. What little there remained. So next on his way to the line comes the number 25. A story of outstanding circumstances for George Todd. Was down and out after that collision at race 1. Could yet start race 2 at the front of the field. He needs to make 45 thousandths of a second over Melvin Milliston, the championship lead so far. What can George Todd do then on, I believe, his second race in with us? Technically his 3rd qualifying session. Down towards the line he goes then. There's one more lap left to go. Across the line he goes, 45 thousandths of a second. Couldn't be reached this time around. A bit of a fluke on the exit of turns 9 and 10. He's got one more go around here before the end of quali 2. Next to the line comes the 98 Felix Schwab. Went from 11th to 6th. What can he do now at the end of this lap? He pulls it in early. Across the line there goes Bruno Carr. And up to third fastest ahead of Cas van Veltzen. Has cleared that 22 thousandths of a second margin and then some to put himself ahead of the 420. Which, by the way, just crossed the line there. Sadly, not to an improvement. .724 next to the line. Here comes Ethan Oliver, and he's up to 5th. They're ahead of Tyler Vermack, Byron Forrest, and Felix Schwab, and Christian LeBay, and James Mason. Now is in the upper echelon here of this grid, in the top 5, right with Cas van Veltzen. So we're at the end of quali now. Let's catch on board with the final couple of corners of the final lap of quali for the 25 of George Todd. It hangs in such an infinitesimal balance between himself and Melvin Milliston. The gap so close. Bear in mind, and I brought this up over the course of the last couple of streams, the human reaction speed sits at around 2 to 3 tenths of a second on average. The blinking speed of a human sits at around 100 to 150 milliseconds. So it is quite literally in the stake of top 3 here. Blink and you'll miss it between Milliston, Todd, and Carr. Todd brings it into the pits then. What can Carr do? He's off at turn 8. So Milliston looks to take things home here for pole position here at the end of quali 2. Bear in mind, there's still a few more drivers left on track that can maybe have a say-so in this. Among them appears to be Cas van Veltzen and Ethan Oliver on what has been a blindsiding quali here for the 724. Here comes the 68 to the line then, so... And he does open the margins up. I was about to say, would Todd's effort to clear 45 thousandths of a second be in vain? So it does appear. The 824 next to the line. Byron Forrest from 7th, maintains 7th for the end of qualifying. Here comes the 724 then. The Bentley, which has been a real star of the show of qualifying, maintains a top 5. The 413 next to the line. Here comes James Mason and maintains 10 for the end of quali 2. That has been quite the exciting qualifying session then. In drier conditions than the race just before it. Let's see if we're lucky second time around here for the chances of the end of round 8. Ethan Oliver claiming he had enough in the bag for P2 on the grid. He could have made half a second to get up with almost said Jason Todd. I'm pretty sure that's a DC character, if I'm not mistaken. No, with George Todd. So, dry conditions at long last, but it does not come without its price, namely the fact we're heading into nighttime racing. Conditions for temperature will be dropping away. Melvin Milliston leads the charge then on today's grid from pole position. George Todd on the front row alongside him. Bruno Carr in 3rd. Cas van Veltzen 4th. Ethan Oliver. Actually, we just saw a disconnect there from Van Veltzen, so trouble for the 420. Ethan Oliver now up to 4th. Tyler Vermack in 5th, Byron Forrest in 6th, Felix Schwab 7th, Christian LeBay in 8th, James Mason in 9th, Leon Schumacher promoted to the top 10. Ivan Sanchez in 11th, Sergio Belda in 12th, Alex Albert in 13th, Carl Jenkins 14th, Ben Cheeseman in 15th. We see Kevin Quain appearing to join the session in the 607, will likely start then from the back. And that could be the same story then for Cas van Veltzen. That has been catastrophic, the timing of that disconnect. That has really not gone well for him there. What it has gone well for, though, is Ethan Oliver, because he makes his way up to the 2nd row, much to the chagrin of the 420 of Van Veltzen. Not really sure what's going on with those servers there. This is absolute G-Portal nonsense. Utter G-Portal nonsense. Van Veltzen rejoins the session, starts from 16th on the field. He is a worlds apart there, 11 positions between himself and Tyler Vermack. But we've seen when pushed into situations like this, Van Veltzen can be one seriously dangerous talent on that grid. We saw it in the Solo Multiclass Endurance Championship. We predicted it at 2 laps for him to clear the GT4s to get up to the back of GT3s. He was on top of the trailing GT3 car in the span of 5 corners.
30 seconds.
The 30-second warning then shown. We'll be getting on board with Melvin Milliston, who leads the charge then for this formation lap. Definitely a much more bizarre story yet to be told here. We see a lot of stars of that first qualifying grid no longer find themselves present factors inside of that top 4. Milliston then will take that lead from George Todd, then Bruno Carr, then Ethan Oliver. You can see as well. Now, I'm not 100% sure if we have any pit lane starts. The 420 is now starting from the back. That has got to be really, really rough news for Cas van Veltzen. Taking us away then, Melvin Milliston from George Todd. Obviously, we are very much so past the end of qualifying now. We're onto that formation lap here for race 2 of round 8 of the championship. Heading into nighttime conditions, what does that mean for our drivers today? Well, they'll have a little less grip than the average dry race. I don't think they're going to get anywhere near as close as what it was looking like for the start of race 1, but conditions will be worsening in terms of track temperature. It will be harder and harder as the race progresses and as the sun sets yonder the horizon here in Styria for tyre temperatures to maintain a very level stead. It's going to be much, much harder to preserve some of that heat. It means that overall efficiency of the tyre is going to go down. A little less grip on corner entry, a little less grip on corner exit. Overall, struggling just a little bit more. It's as if you've come out onto fresh tyres for the first time. Maybe a little less so than that. Down towards turn 4 then. It's going to be much easier for the drivers this time around compared to the wet conditions to manage corners like turn 4, where we have seen definitely a few spats of action, especially up on the front row in the battle between Van Veltzen and Vermaak in race 1, where we did see a few knocks, a few scrapes, a few pushes between the pair. Nothing severe though. And that major incident that we were supposedly missed out on was actually self-inflicted there for Van Veltzen. He claims that he lost traction and just half spun there. It was very good car control to keep himself close enough to Vermaak to attempt to chase him all the way to the line. So we watch here with Milliston and Todd. Right behind him is going to be an incredibly lively field, make no mistake of it. Tyler Vermaak alongside Ethan Oliver right there in the background. Bruno Carr actually has free reign of that second row because of Cas van Veltzen's disconnect. So the swerving to try and get a little bit more of the heat left in those tyres to stick around for the first lap. You can see even a little bit of squirreling there from the 68. Melvin Milliston looking to take this to an 8th win. Can he do so then over the course of the next 30 minutes of racing today? Or have we got a few tricks up our sleeve then from George Todd lining up alongside him on that front row? Who could emerge then as the victor of the second of 2 races today? We've already seen an incredibly exciting opening race. Now to cap off round 8 of the championship, we once again begin the crawl down towards the line. On much more precarious positions than the last. 9 on one side, 8 on the other due to a disconnect there from Van Veltzen. Down towards the line then for the last time today here at the Red Bull Ring in much dry conditions. We are green and racing here for 30 minutes. Down towards turn 1, immediately a great start from the front row, but it seems an even better start when comparing it for Ethan Oliver, as a matter of fact. As you can see, already up past Bruno Carr, was alongside him on the way down towards turn 1. Oliver up to 3rd, Todd 2nd, Milliston 1st. It's very nearly side by side already between the pair of them. You can see further down the line, Bruno Carr and Ethan Oliver are side by side. Oliver to the inside, Carr to the outside. Meanwhile, on that front row, now Todd up to the inside on Milliston. It's contact down at turn 3 almost immediately, and somehow still surfing the madness of it all. Melvin Milliston now side by side. Ethan Oliver does appear, yes, to lead here in Austria. Unbelievable stuff. Milliston now drops down to 2nd. Vermaak is alongside Todd, down to 4th. Carr in 5th. Side by side then, leaping up the inside. It's almost contact there, rubbing between the Bentley and the McLaren. We're watching here with Melvin Milliston in the fight for the race lead. This is absolutely mega here in the Red Bull Ring. Down towards turn 6. Vermaak all over the back end of Oliver. Milliston trying around the outside at turn 6 now. So the Wirth curve takes a bit of gravel with him. Not Bruno Carr, sorry. George Todd is at the inside. Bruno Carr is alongside James Mason, who has now got up into 5th. This is absolutely brutal. The helmet cam here from Melvin Milliston shows all. As you can see, George Todd in front of him. James Mason not too far behind. You can see the glow of the headlights on that BMW down into turn 9. Further up the road, that bright canary yellow McLaren, number 81 of Tyler Vermaak, chasing down Ethan Oliver, who I don't know was expecting to lead today's race, but is now leading it after lap 1. Down towards the Niki Lauda curve at turn 1. This could get hairy between the Ferrari and the McLaren. Melvin Milliston's looking to thread the eye of a needle here up on George Todd. Now on the exit of turn 1, he's up and ahead. Brilliant stuff there. That took some serious guts out of Milliston to do so. So, looking at where things stand after that first lap, Ethan Oliver leads in Austria. Tyler Vermack in second, Melvin Milliston in third. Another bit of contact between himself and George Todd. What on earth is going on between these two? Now surfing the madness up into third goes James Mason. Bruno Carr is right behind him. Byron Forrest up a position as well as he too gets up and ahead of Milliston and Todd. Milliston trying around the outside here. This could get hairy between the pair of them. Does he have enough momentum? No, he gets right onto the back end of the 824 of Byron Forrest. Then down towards turn 6, leaps for it there. Can the 68 hold his nerve? He runs wide. Here comes the 25 alongside him. Then George Todd looks to take this into another side-by-side battle. We're up in towards the Worth curve at turn 7, now to turn 8. Meanwhile, up the order, Bruno Carr is all over the back end of James Mason on the newly inherited fight for the podium. This has been an absolute jaw-dropper of a start for a race today. Further up the order, Ethan Oliver has towed the line with Tyler Vermack, and they are miles out now from the fight of third place. We can see from Melvin Milliston's point of view here, as he's looking to size up Byron Forrest for a move down at turn 1, is actually to go the long way around, trying for the more aggressive of two lines on the exit of turn 1 now for the run uphill. He knows he's got the grunt there, a twin-turbo V8 up against a naturally aspirated flat 6. You do the maths on that one, up through turn 2. They're side by side, following in his wake though, and you can see the glow of the headlights over the 68 as we head down into turn 3 at Remus. That's George Todd, now side by side with Byron Forrest. No contact that time around, so a bit bizarre as to why it's only been those two running into any kinds of bother down at Remus. You can see there's the two race leaders, Ethan Oliver and Tyler Vermack. James Mason in third, Bruno Carr fourth, Melvin Milliston in fifth. George Todd now up to sixth and ahead of Byron Forrest. Cas van Velzen, I did say it, he is an absolute weapon when he starts from the back. He's up to eighth, and it's not even been 3 laps, not even been 5 minutes of today's race. That is a dangerous, dangerous game one plays with when you put him at the back, because he turns into something unlike anything I've ever seen. He's a man possessed, and he's right to the back end of his fellow Porsche. Let's see if we can catch on board. Briefly checking in with our front row here, out through turn 9, now in towards turn 10, but let's get a view from the point of view of the 420. Here is Cas van Velzen on, I can only describe as an enraged drive. He's sliding out through turn 10. He's driving this like Rally GT. I've never seen the like. He's up with Byron Forrest, doing his best impersonation of highway patrol with the amount of flashing lights he wants to give there on the straight lines. Now up the inside of the Niki Lauda curve. One could consider this a little bit unsafe because he's not got his headlights on. There could be the inquiry by the stewards. Up the order, it is an almighty ensemble of cars here. You can see all caught up in what is a chimera of vehicles. Is among them James Mason and Bruno Carr, right behind them, sandwiched as a matter of fact. That's almost, what is that? I'm trying to remember exactly. Is it Hakkinen and Schumacher kind of move there as they did up the Kemmel Straight? So too was the incident there for Bruno Carr and Melvin Milliston. George Todd, though, is right in the middle. Sorry, for George Todd and Melvin Milliston going around Bruno Carr. That was, I'm pretty sure that, yeah, Hakkinen and Schumacher-esque, dare I say it. As you can see now, Cas van Velzen right to the back of Bruno Carr. He's already claimed so many under his belt so far in this race. He wants to get closer and closer and closer to his adversary, Tyler Vermack, who's currently up in that fight for the race lead with Ethan Oliver. Right now, we watched absolute warfare play out here. See here from George Todd's point of view, sandwiched in between two McLarens. All of them fighting vigorously for third place on that field right now. Side by side there between Milliston and Mason down towards turn 1. There could be contact there. Surfing the madness through comes the 25 to put himself with. Could it be 3 abreast up the hill as we head up to turn 2 and 3? I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure it's even physically possible here, but we're about to find out. Bruno Carr, meanwhile, is right with in this fight with George Todd. Very nearly contact between the pair of them. Down towards Remus. You can see Van Velzen and Forrest right behind them. The 2 Porsche cars now up in this. It is absolute war here at the Red Bull Ring. I've never seen a battle this rich on a track like this. Down towards Schlossgold we go. This is where we could be seeing absolute mutually assured destruction between all three as there's contact between Carr and Van Velzen. Todd, we're still watching with here in 5th place, is now under the gavel here of the indiscriminate wrath of the 420. I have never seen a drive like this out of Van Velzen, and frankly, it scares me. There's definitely going to be that steward's inquiry for George Todd. He's definitely had a few too many prangs in through turn 3 now for the stewards not to take note of that one. He's right up to the back end of James Mason, now having lost out on that podium to Melvin Milliston. Now on the charge back towards Tyler Vermack. We see George Todd very nearly took Mason off the track there. So close to the BMW. Drops behind quite a ways here. And here comes Cas Van Velzen. You can see that bright green Manthey EMA Porsche charging up to the 25 as we head into Nicky Lauda curve at turn 1. Right behind him as well is fellow Porsche Byron Forrest. We do want to get a look in with that front row because so I'm told it's incredibly close between Vermack and Oliver. Down towards, I believe, looking at it here, that's Remus. Around the outside goes Ethan Oliver. Let's see if we can catch on board here with the leading Bentley. I don't think he was expecting so early in the race to be leading here at the Red Bull Ring, but he's definitely bargained for much more than he's got today. The 724 has led this with ruthless abandon. Number 81 has been charging at every which corner to try and take this off of him. Now could yet be the opportunity out of turn 4, now to turn 5, now to turn 6. What can Vermack do against Oliver? Now as both of them charge down into turn 6 at Rauch. Vermack now up 0.3 of a second after that move into turn 7 and 8 we go. You can see the McLaren getting a little bit out of shape there. That's allowing the Bentley to get close to him by turns 9 and 10. Right now, Tyler Vermack looks to have retaken his title of race winner today, perhaps with 21 minutes to spare. He now takes the lead of this race. Could he be going for 2 race wins today? Not if Ethan Oliver's got anything to say about it, and believe me, from the performance of that Bentley today, he does. Milliston then 1.1 seconds up the road. We're now on board with James Mason. Was previously on that podium. George Todd there, who's quickly formed himself into being the Grim Reaper of this paddock, is in 5th place. I want to discuss very quickly, as we can see, having dropped back quite a way, is Cas Van Velzen. What on earth happened for the 420? We missed out on that whilst we were watching the battle up on the front row. We're going to have to catch up with him in a moment's time, as we can see very close action here between Byron Forrest and Bruno Carr. Down towards Remus corner we go. Carr to the outside, Forrest to the inside. Last of the late breakers there for the McLaren 380 of Bruno Carr. That was exceptional stuff there. Great bravery by Bruno Carr, the Brazilian talent here on what is, I believe, his first set of races here in the Sunday League. Has really wowed expectations. Had he been an earlier presence in the championship, I'd make no doubts over his possibility to fight for season 3. But here's the championship leader, Melvin Milliston, now 4.3 seconds from Ethan Oliver in 2nd place. James Mason 2 seconds behind him. And behind James Mason, incredibly close, as a matter of fact, dangerously close, I think, from Mason's point of view, is George Todd. We also see a very close fight here. Sergio Belda versus Felix Schwab. The BMW versus the Ferrari out through turn 6 at Rauch. Now towards the Worth curve at turn 7. Here to the inside goes Felix Schwab. That is definitely quite brave there by the 98. Does he hold his nerve, though, on his way up and out through turn 8? Yes, he does. Very well done by Felix Schwab. Took a lot of guts to put himself in that position there. Mason now loses that position to George Todd. Bruno Carr is 0.9 of a second away and hunting down the 413. It is action every which way you look. I can barely speak. Meanwhile, down the line, you can see that LeBay down in 11th. So something had to have happened there for the Aston Martin as well. Whether or not he was also caught in the disconnects, I don't believe he was. So that means something had to have occurred for him on track to put himself down and out of the top 10. He is not going to be happy. Neither too will his teammate Kevin Quain. Started from the pit lane today. He's back into it in 17th. One Malwar racing driver is going to be grinning ear to ear for being in so many battles today. Byron Forrest now reunited with his fellow Porsche Cas Van Velzen on their way down towards turn 4 at Schlossgold. Up the track there, we can see Bruno Carr chasing James Mason. So getting a look here as we're approaching the halfway mark of the race. It is Vermack from Oliver, Milliston, Todd, Mason and Carr for the top 6. Forrest, Van Velzen and Sanchez for the top 9. Rounding out the top 10 is Ben Cheeseman. I must say, that has definitely been a performance for the ages here for Ethan Oliver. The 7.24 was very, very close to a podium in race 1 as we saw his fight with Schwab all the way to the checkered flag. Now Vermaak leads again. He could be going double trouble here. Vermaak has already made history by bringing the tally of race-winning nations up to 8 by winning at what is the closest to a home race for him since I don't believe we're in Kyle Army this season. Looking at it here, no, as a matter of fact. He's already taken that long-awaited, uncontested race win, and now he's looking for doubles. Ethan Oliver, though, looks at the chance here of his first ever podium in the Sunday League. George Todd now up to 3rd. Melvin Milliston has run a cropper here because he is having absolute nightmare fuel hit him. He's all the way down in 11th, 12th. What is going on here for Milliston? I don't believe I quite understand what's going on for the 68. How has he dropped back this far? What happened to Melvin Milliston? He was 3rd in this race, or very close to 3rd. Actually, he was 3rd, sorry. Anyone in chat able to inform us on what just went on there whilst we were checking through the field? Something seriously untoward has happened for Milliston. We can see another incident there involved amongst it. That was Christian LeBay, and I think the 114 was caught up in there as well. Ben Cheeseman also caught in the fray of it down at Schlossgold. But if he wasn't in a great mood now, I highly doubt he's going to be in a much better mood after that. LeBay and Cheeseman down to 15th and 16th. Byron Forrest, I want to point out, is getting closer and closer to Bruno Carr, who himself is getting closer and closer to James Mason. We do have a 4-way split for 4th place here. And looks like, if we watch from the point of view of the car at the back of that field, we can see that Bruno Carr was trying his luck on the inside of James Mason. Down at turn 1, we're watching with Cas van Velzen. He gets dangerously close to the back end of his fellow Porsche, Byron Forrest. So to give some perspective here, let's see if we can catch on board with Bruno Carr as he's now side by side with James Mason. Mason's in the BMW, Bruno Carr's in the green and grey McLaren. You can see in the background there, the red and black is Byron Forrest, and the bright green, the Manthey EMA colours, is Cas van Velzen. Those two are side by side. Much too is the same for the row rights in front of him. We had 2 sets of drivers go side by side there and gain positions for the likes of it, because up back into 4th goes James Mason. Cas van Velzen's up to 6th and ahead of Byron Forrest. Now looking at his chances on Bruno Carr. How does this fold out as we head into turn 4? Single file right now. We watch here with Bruno Carr. This is absolutely insane. I have no idea which way to look. All of this is in contention for 4th on that grid. 4 cars in all. 4 different manufacturers as well. I want to point that one out. Bruno Carr with McLaren, James Mason with BMW. Actually, no, sorry, it's 3 different manufacturers there. I was reading further up ahead with George Todd in 3rd. My mistake. So, 3 different manufacturers. We have McLaren, BMW, and Porsche. A bit of a stab there out through turn 9 for Bruno Carr. You can see was trying to correct a bit of oversteer, but that invites Cas van Velzen up into the fight for 5th place. He goes up and ahead of Bruno Carr, forces him out of that fight for 4th place. And now he could yet lose another position, because you can see poking his nose up ahead, the fellow Porsche there of Byron Forrest down into turn 1. Bruno Carr is forced to secede. The 99 is in trouble. That I believe to be, yes, Leon Schumacher in trouble. Yellow flags are out in sector 3. We're going to try and figure out what happened there. The 99 has gone back running. Alex Albert getting up and ahead of him into 15th place. Leon Schumacher, I believe, had another spin on that straight. Not the first time, I believe, that's happened to him today. Ethan Oliver now 2.5 seconds from Tyler Vermaak, but he finds himself slowly being caught up by George Todd. This could get dicey between the Bentley, an absolute juggernaut of GT3, up against that Ferrari with Todd at the wheel, and he has been, let's say less than delicate with it over the course of today's race. Now, James Mason. Now, we know what he can do in defensive performances, and it is the unstoppable force meets the immovable object here, because Mason has fantastic defense. Van Velzen has a fantastic offense. So this is going to be quite a doozy here down into turn 7 and 8. BMW versus Porsche. Watching then with the BMW, we're on board with Mason in that fight for 4th place. Van Velzen all over his hind quarter here. Down towards turn 9 we go. You can see he switched his lights off. It is very cheeky what the 420 is doing. Technically illegal. A bit of a odd run through turn 10. pushes Cas van Velzen now backwards into his fellow Porsche there. Was slower by 0.06 of a second to Byron Forrest in that last lap just gone. Out through turn 1 we go then on lap 11. 13 minutes left to play for. It has been an incredible round here of the Sunday League here at the Red Bull Ring. It's our first time back at the circuit since Season 1 Round 4, which we were sadly unable to cover, but so I'm told it was the birthplace of Melvin Milliston's first ever career win in the Sunday League in his time with BMW. But up the inside at Remus then on a very good exit is the 420 on the 413. Mason v Van Velzen, who comes out on top. The BMW faster in a straight line, the Porsche faster onto the brakes, I should say, better on the brakes. So who comes out on top of it? Van Velzen, last of the late breakers there on James Mason. He's going to continue around the outside on the exit of Schlossgold. We're now in the third person view. Let's see if we can get on board with the helmet camera here for James Mason in his fight against the 420 of Cas van Velzen, all in that stead of fourth place. Right behind him, if you take a look in the mirrors there, you can see the red and black Porsche, the number 824 of Byron Forrest. Right behind him is the 380 of Bruno Carr. This is exceptional stuff. 12 minutes to spare here at the Red Bull Ring. War has been officially declared inside of that top 10. Van Velzen gloating at Mason. This is some touring car level camaraderie we're seeing amongst the drivers here. Really, really boisterous here in the Red Bull Ring. No holds barred. All gloves are off. All bets are off, I should say as well. The gloves are off in this fight. Things could get a bit naughty here. So Mason forced out of that fight for fourth, as he's going to have to start considering his odds of the skirmish going on behind him. Byron Forrest much later on the brakes. Mason having a bit of a cropper there out through turn 1 as we start to see cresting through the first of our runs here. Over the more hilly section running uphill here at the Red Bull Ring. Not really sure what I'm on about anymore. Heading down towards turn 3, Byron Forrest side by side with Bruno Carr. Carr going the long way around the outside. We are going to quickly check in as well. We just see here between two more cars as it's contact between Schumacher and Albert down at turn 1. What was the BMW thinking with that one there? Let's get on board though. Back into the skirmish of things with Byron Forrest side by side with Bruno Carr. Now he's got the advantage of better brakes over the McLaren, but the McLaren's got better acceleration. So who comes out on top up through Schlossgold? It's Forrest. Up the order you can see there was the previous fight for fourth. Cas van Velzen now starting to toe the line away from James Mason in the BMW up front. We're on board at the moment with Byron Forrest. So with 10 minutes to spare, we'll stay on board with this fight here. It's Vermac from Oliver. Todd has closed the gap down here. We could be seeing a fight for second in a moment's time. We're back on board with Byron Forrest. He is caught in an airtight environment here. It's really between a rock and a hard place for him. Mason in front, Carr out back, Schwab into the top 10 as well. Milliston has fought his way back up into the top 10 with the fastest lap. Lord only knows what happened for him earlier on in today's race to relegate him from a chance of a podium. It's not done very great measures for his chances of the championship lead, but I think it may just be enough for him to continue to push forth into Indianapolis at round 9. Running wide then out through turn 1 was Felix Schwab. That's not going to do him any favours because here comes the 68. Looking quickly back in here with that fight for 5th place. Mason still continues to toe the line ahead of Forrest and Carr. Carr getting a bit squirrely there into Remus. Trying to find an edge here on the 824 in front of him. Just can't seem to find the room. And with time dwindling, we could see a bit more of an exacerbated performance out of Bruno Carr by the end of today's race. We know he's not afraid to get his elbows out in this race here, but how far is he willing to push the envelope out and what is acceptable on track? We can see Byron Forrest is closing the gap down. Very, very close now to James Mason inside of that top 5. Mason is having to do a world's task here of defensive performances for that top 5 position. He knows it'll be vital for his championship hopes, for his promotion up through the order in the championship standings. And it'll also be greatly, greatly beneficial for the K1 Esports team. We're currently second in the championship for teams and behind Malwar Transport Racing. Or Malwar Racing Team, I should say. Byron Forrest then down towards turn 1. He's right up to the back end of James Mason. Mason holds closer to centre mass of the road here. especially past that apex. What it does invite, though, is a world-class attempt at a switchback there for Byron Forrest, and he puts him ever closer. You can see it's a 3-car train all the way down, all the way up, I should say, into turn 2, then at Remus at turn 3. Now we can see very nearly has a suggestion of 3 abreast. It very nearly, yes, as a matter of fact, goes into 3 abreast between these 3. Down through Remus. Ultimately emerging the victor of this small skirmish, James Mason, then right behind him, still going on for position, in control of 6th right now, Byron Forrest versus Bruno Carr. How does it unfold? Heading back into Schlossgold, still to the inside with the Porsche, onto the later the braking, or the later of the 2 for braking. Like I said, the action here is just so rich, so raw, and so plentiful, I am losing the concept of how to speak English. Out through turn 6, now to turn 7. Forrest now having yo-yoed his way back toward James Mason. He's sort of stuck in a pendulum here. As you can see, when one driver tends to push forth, it knocks him back into the path of another here. With Bruno Carr definitely laying the intensity on thick and fast, it's pushed Forrest back up to Mason. Then when Mason pulls away, Forrest draws back into Carr, and it just continues back and forth. It's like these two are playing ping pong with that poor Porsche. The 824 has got to think of something and think of it fast. Time is fickle here, the Red Bull Ring. Byron Forrest has got to think of something. Out through turn 1, you can see Bruno Carr's right with him. Oh my word, it very nearly got into contact between the pair of them. Now they're side by side on the run uphill towards turn 2. Bruno Carr will be to the inside at turn 2. Will he be able to make it the inside at turn 3, as we saw with Van Veltsen Viva Mac in the last race just gone? What on earth just happened there? It was a bit of a... Oh, I don't like what's going on there. Very, very jittery there for Bruno Carr. I'm not sure I'm liking what I'm seeing. Oh my goodness, don't tell me. Don't tell me. We've just seen a wave of disconnects there. Oh no. This might not be good here, folks. That is a bit of a bizarre one, ladies and gents. I'm a little confused as to what's gone on there. The server... Oh, that's not good. That's really not good. Do bear with us, folks, here. The race is still going on, but something has gone definitely quite wrong. Another disconnect wave, so I'm told there. You can see the bottom left, the server statistics. Something is going massively out of control with the server. There's nothing we can do right now to try and stem the tide. This is a bit of a bizarre one here, ladies and gents. I'm not really sure what to think of it. 5 minutes left to go. I don't know whether or not the race will be red flagged or not. I think it's just going to run perhaps to the line. Again, this is a very, very odd set of circumstances. The bottom line as well, that's George Todd now up to 2nd. Ethan Oliver down to 3rd place. What on earth is going on? Among those disconnects as well was Cas van Veltsen. So he had a really good turnaround drive there, and it's all come apart at the seams for him. We can see up through Remus, then side by side between Byron Forrest and James Mason. Now this is in contention for 4th place. Attempting to rejoin the lobby then, Leon Schumacher was one of the cars affected by that disconnect wave. Now that is really, really bizarre, folks. I'm not really sure how to make head or tails from that situation. It's definitely worked quite nicely for Melvin Milliston because it's pushed him all the way up to 6th place. So his chances for damage control of his stead of the championship lead has definitely been greatly benefited from that wave of disconnects. Yeah, honestly, I'm starting to see some of the frustration come in the server chats for the condition of them servers. It can't keep going on like this, can it, surely? With the servers being the way they are, that's just frankly unacceptable. Nothing that race control can do about that, to be completely honest. So if you're going to be mad at anyone, be mad at the server provider, not at the guys running this race. Be mad at G-Portal for that one. That's not on at all, really, because with how good the racing's been today, and for stuff to wind up the way it has, it's just not acceptable. So up the inside, they're having a bit of a less than ideal run, was Byron Forrest. That invites Melvin Milliston up to come and have a go for 5th place. The McLaren right on top of the Porsche on his way uphill now. 4 minutes left to go, and what has definitely been a much more bizarre end to this race than expected. Down towards turn 3 then, around the outside, forms 5th place for Melvin Milliston. You can see that both Mason and Milliston are deciding to run things in full stealth mode. Now, this is a bit more of a tradition for Mason than we've seen with Milliston before, but if the drivers really want to play this way, then fine, they can play this way, but let's see who finds themselves in the wall. But then again, these are two very confident drivers. I don't doubt their ability to race in almost total darkness here at the Red Bull Ring, but surely something's got to give. And we see here from Byron Forrest's point of view, he's the only one carving light into this section of the track. And it's for these two drivers ahead of him, separated by 0.2 of a second down towards Rin at turn 9. Milliston versus Mason. George Todd then up to second. We saw that earlier on. We see that Kyle Jenkins is on his way back out of the pit lane in the 113. Ben Cheeseman, his teammate, in the 114 in 11th, also has his lights off. Tyler Vermack leads the charge then by 2.5 seconds. George Todd is actually, I want to say here, not getting too ahead of myself, but he is drawing that gap in ever so slightly. Ethan Oliver has now switched his lights off as well. You can now see 3 abreast as well, just as we catch on board there between Mason, Milliston and Forrest, but it was contact. And I believe that was a disconnect for Byron Forrest. So the North American drivers seem to be in serious trouble. Mason gets turned into the wall. What has gone on here? Utter bedlam. No, it was Forrest that turned Mason around. What has happened? I am so confused now. So Forrest turned his headlights off. But different to how the BMW operates, where it's got those yellow auxiliary lights, the Porsche just goes completely stealth. I was so confused. I thought he disconnected because that Porsche, correct me if I'm wrong, just vanished through turn 3. The bottom line is Forrest now up and ahead of both Milliston and Mason for 4th. Schwab now in the middle of both of them. Milliston and Mason now down to 6th and 7th. Those two getting into arms down at turn 3. Then it continues with Forrest turning Mason into the wall. What on earth is happening here at the Red Bull Ring? It is coming apart at the seams. 1.5 minutes left to go. Let the madness end. Right now, caught in the midst, Felix Schwab looking at another top 5. He was on the podium in race 1. Now looking at a top 4. One minute left to go, so we'll be heading on to that final lap in a moment's time here for Tyler Vermack. We're watching now with Felix Schwab as he's under siege from Melvin Milliston. Now this is all in contention for 4th place, currently held by Byron Forrest. The long way around then for the 68. He gets up and around of Felix Schwab. Now does he get side by side here with Byron Forrest? Yes, he does for the run down to turn 4. Back into single file, taking a little bit of slipstream with him on his way down towards Schlossgold. Can he make 2 positions for the price of 1? Here comes Melvin Milliston around the outside. Forrest to the inside. Schwab an onlooker right now. Right behind him is James Mason. Round the outside, a bit of stab of oversteer. Good car recovery there by Milliston. It gives the bottom line here is the 4th place position still resides in the court of the 824 Byron Forrest. Milliston still right behind him. Tyler Vermack crosses the line there with 1 more lap left to spare. Back on board with the fight for 4th place. Forrest, Milliston, Schwab and Mason all caught in a tangle here for the fight of 4th place. Meanwhile, the podium seems all but decided right now. George Todd up to 2nd. Ethan Oliver gets a podium on his return to the Sunday League. Down towards turn 10 we go then. On to the final lap. We'll be following on with these drivers for the next couple of next minute or so before we get on board. Sorry, that's the that's the wrong one there. This one here before we get on board with Tyler Vermack, getting ahead of ourselves in the preparations for Vermack's imminent arrival to the checkered flag. Watching with Melvin Milliston caught up in that fight for 4th place. Now side by side with Byron Forrest. Does he finally lay this one in at Remus? He's gone the long way around. Does he hold his nerve past turn 3? Yes, he does. Now it's a drag race up towards turn 4, and it still places Byron Forrest to the inside. So this could go all the way down to the wire here. But the bottom line, you can see Milliston switches it back for the inside line at Schlossgold. Now going around the outside as Byron Forrest contact. Door dinging between the pair of them. Could Schwab and Mason surf this one through? You can see how dangerously close it is turned around there. Byron Forrest into the wall by Felix Schwab. A dramatic end to race 2 today. Down to the line comes Tyler Vermack. Double on the trot here at the Red Bull Ring. He took home his first victory here in the Sunday League, and he does one more by taking home his 2nd back-to-back Brilliant stuff here by Vermaak. George Todd in second. Ethan Oliver takes home a triumphant podium position. Finishing third in that race, Milliston then all the way to the line. Where does it go then? It's only Milliston, Schwab and Mason left in that fight for fourth. Milliston takes home fourth, Schwab fifth, Mason sixth. Byron Forrest will be seeing red in the court of that 98 later on today. There will be an almost instant steward's investigation there. That was definitely the signs of it. That is really quite the controversial end to a race. I mean, God only knows what was going on there. Plenty of drivers turning their lights off. I don't think anyone could see. I mean, this one's going to get ugly, I can tell already. So, Byron Forrest in 7th, Vivan Sanchez 8th, Lebain 9th, Cheeseman 10th, Beldit 11th, Albert 12th, Jenkins 13th, Schumacher 14th, and Carr in 15th. We'll wait for that final result to come through. Double on the trot then for Tyler Vermaak. Now up from out of a joint third place with the rest of the field to a definitive third place with 2 race wins in the championship overall. Well, this has definitely been a controversial end to a race, one that I am going to massively distance myself from. You know, if you see these drivers about to go nuclear, the best thing you can do is stay as far away from the fallout. And make no mistake, nuclear winter is coming for this paddock after a race like that. And that's all from us here on TRTN. We're going to get ourselves out of the line of fire very, very quickly here to wrap up our broadcast weekend. It has definitely been an action-packed one, definitely wrought with controversy, especially here at the end of the run for this week at the Sunday League. Round 8 does finish with a bang. This is going to be quite an interesting next 2 weeks. Looking at where we'll be, we're over to the genesis of American motor racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the 28th for the penultimate round of the championship. Back to the 60-minute format and then back onto the double sprint for the long-awaited and delayed Silverstone round. That double sprint bringing us to the end of Season 3. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Good luck and good night.